All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, we'd like to give our praise and glory to
YAHAWAH,
BAHASHAM,
YAHAWASHI,
BAHASHAM,
BAHASHAM.
Double honors to the elders, the apostles of great millstone that taught us the truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. And the elect begins brothers of the great millstone, Chicago County. Brother, I was with
Brother I
come back at you, brothers and sisters of the household of faith of the hopeful race select within the lesson. And Lord, we hope this lesson is edifying. You know, as you can see, the title says better and joyful beginnings, because we're coming to the end, you know, of Babylon the Great, which is America, man. We see this place is being destroyed economically. You know, because a brother can grab that on deck as you become
I
weak
got
as
you.
you know, and ultimately what joyful beginnings, man, because ultimately beginning with the elect, man, and we're going to experience how it's truly what it truly means to live, man, you know, because ultimately living here in America, man, you know, everything is used against us, everything is weaponized against us that Esau Edom uses, man, but ultimately the Lord is coming back to bring this place down and ultimately, you know, bring a refreshing in the earth, man, you know.
Joy cometh in the morning.
Yep. What's that, Psalms 30? We'll grab that on deck. We can get that too.
But I got you Isaiah 14 and 10. Okay, this Isaiah 14, basically the downfall of Babylon. And it says, verse 10, all they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us?
Yeah, because ultimately America was looked at as the ultimate superpower. You know, it still kind of is, but ultimately what? You got Russia now, you got China, you know, you got Iran, you know, these different countries ultimately allied together. You know, we were just before the camera even came on, we was watching what's that, Myron Gaines.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, you know, the decreasing of the petrodollar.
Right.
You know how ultimately it's getting weaker. America as a whole is getting weaker, man. And ultimately, what was it? He used
said it's no long. It's now it's a multipolar world.
Yep.
It's a multipolar world. Other countries are able to exist outside of the United States grip. Their financial system, like you mentioned, the petrodollar.
Yep.
Global reserve currency status.
Yep. And America ultimately doesn't have that leverage on the world as it used to, man. You know, because what you got, you know, these different superpowers ultimately what, you know, becoming, you know, stronger.
Khan.
Did you that was it?
This I could hit verse 11. It says, thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy violas. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee.
Right. It's a representation of decay, man. You know, ultimately what this place is decaying, man. You know, you look at America, you know, several years ago compared to now, man. You know, it's a corrosion, it's decay. You can see it, man. You know, this place is dying economically, man. The lack of jobs, you know, the lack of resources, because ultimately what America is doing, you know, America ultimately thrives on stealing, rape, robbery, and murder these other countries, man. But we can see the decay, we can see the corrosion that's happening, man, as we approach the end of this man's kingdom, man.
And this economic war leads to real war. So all these things is fulfilling the biblical prophecy of World War III.
Yep.
Because they have a saying where it says, when all else fails, they take you to war. By America losing its grip on financial control, they have no choice but to take you to war.
Yep.
And that's what we saw with Venezuela.
Because America thrives off oil, the petrodollar, you know, things of that nature. But you got to know yourself.
I had two.
Yeah, you got it up.
Book of Isaiah, chapter 47 and verse 5. It says, sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the lady of kingdoms, right? So Babylon had its time to reign, right? It's set, all right, as the dominant empire, you know, coming up on what they say 250 years now, you know, as being the dominant established kingdom. And so now what? It's a downfall. That was the last kingdom to reign before the reign of YAHAWASHI outside. It is a eternal mountain in government.
Yeah, because what's that? The average lifespan of a kingdom was what, 250 years, man, before it ultimately crumbles and ultimately decays and is destroyed. You know.
And in the book of Sirach, chapter 10 and verse 8, it says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches gotten by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another, right? So that's all that America's its whole infrastructure and empire is built upon. Unjurious practice, right? Unrighteous practices, man. You know, neglecting of judgment. You know, none of it done in uprightness and righteousness under the structure of YAHAWASHI. You know, it's all okay. That's why the bro went to that is the worms being under them.
Yeah.
Because it's decaying from underneath because this foundation was built upon wickedness, man. You know, and wickedness only endured for a moment. It said, man shall not be established by wickedness.
Brother, grab that Jeremiah 51.
Sorry.
You really start at 1, but the point is in like 7 and 8, 9.
Okay. Book of Jeremiah, chapter 51, and verse 1. It says, thus saith the Lord, YAHAWASHI, behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me a destroying wind.
Yep. And that's what we're seeing right now, man. The Lord is gathering up all these different countries. If you don't have none, everybody, you can grab Joel, the 3rd chapter. You know, it's that 3 and 9. You know, ultimately what the Lord is preparing these countries to ultimately what come up against America. And we know that a lot of these different countries is ultimately allied with Russia. Because it talks about that, what's that, Ezekiel, the 38th chapter? You know, Russia being a garden to them.
Yeah,
man.
that's huge.
You know, so ultimately what? With that, you know, a lot of these countries have nuclear capability, man. And they're going to shoot their arrows, which is those thermonuclear missiles at America, man. That's going to be the end of America. That's that bitter end, man.
That's that destroying wind.
Yep. Hey, as Elder Apostle Gabar always say, America came in bitterly, it's going to go out bitterly.
And the word America even goes back to bitter.
Yep.
Mara.
Verse 2, Jeremiah 51 and 2, and will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her and shall empty her land, for in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about.
Yep. And America's end is nigh, man. You know,
The sign, the writings on the wall, man. Just like Belshazzar.
the ancient Babylonian kingdom, the last king being Belshazzar.
You have been found wanting.
Jeremiah 51 and 3, against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up, and his brigandine, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her hosts.
Yep, and that's exactly what's going to happen by the way of those missiles, man. This place is going to be totally eradicated, you know.
It says, verse 4, thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in the streets. For Israel hath not been forsaken, nor Judah of his power, or of the YAHAWASHI of hosts, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Do not cut off in her iniquities, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. Yep. He will render unto her a recompense.
Right, because we're seeing right now, even these nations that's, you know, inhabited America, these different nations, they're, you know, fleeing back into their own homeland. Because America was once that place where you come here, make money, go back to their country, you know, ultimately what, you know, from the money they made here in America, you know, these different nations getting the rich, they go back to their country, you know, give it to their family. But ultimately, these nations are starting to realize that you can't really squeeze really nothing out of America at this point, huh?
Like,
you know?
The China is looking like a far better business partner because they're willing to do strictly business. They're not going to try to interfere with your regime. They're not going to try to push homosexuality on you. They're not trying to whore out your women. They're not going to attack you. They're not going to do this and that. Who the fuck would want to work with America at this point?
Yeah, because knowing that it's a chance that you're going to be screwed over, man. Look what America is doing to its own allies, man, which is Bible prophecy. So.
Verse 7, Jeremiah 51 and 7, Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad.
Right, those, you know, that wine being those philosophies and things like that, man. Because what do America do when ultimately what they try to invade country? They do a regime change. You know, they ultimately push democracy upon the people, man. Now their women are whores, man. You know, because now Iranian women is ultimately biting back against their men of, you know, they was throwing out hijabs in the street, you know, saying that now they don't want to wear that. You know, that's what happens when America pollutes, you know, your land.
Yeah.
You know, what's that in Habakkuk? It talks
Yeah.
about how's it called? It says you should call them the border of wickedness. You know, because everywhere this place is the Malachi 1, right? Yeah, Malachi 1:4. Yeah, ultimately, you know, that should call them the border of wickedness, man. Everywhere this devil goes, man, you know, he ultimately what pushes democracy or regime change and things of that nature, man. That's what America is known for doing.
And then the end of it is a bitter end, and that's what these countries are seeing. Like the rulers of these different countries are understanding that, like the bros was going into, that is no longer profitable, man.
Yeah.
So they did drink off that wine, they indulged in it, all right. And now that they see it crumbling before them, you know, they trying to pull out. But you know, ultimately, that's YAHAWASHI outside going to do away with the entire system, because none of it works. You know, none of it is profitable, man. You know. And then they made their bid with America, man. All these nations gonna have to pay. And look at us. We still don't have no remedy, no ointment, no balm for our wounds. And out here ain't no nation trying to restore to us, man. So they all gonna be found guilty in that day.
Yep.
You know, verse 8: Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for take balm for her pain, if so she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake us and let us go every one into his own country.
Right.
For her judgment reacheth, like it, bro.
Also like it about that, brother. You got it.
For her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies.
Yeah, kind of like it about that.
Like it, bro.
You know, yeah, this place is ultimately it's not going to be healed, man. You know, whether the president say, you know, it's 30,000 jobs coming back to, you know, America. You know, this is getting better. This is getting better. Hey, this place is prophesied to be destroyed by thermonuclear destruction, man. Right. You know, so this place can't be healed, man. You know, as the elder brother Murphy always say, you can't put sugar on shit and call it a sandwich, man. America has to be destroyed, and it's prophesied to be destroyed, man. You know.
Yep. Yeah, something about that.
That's Habakkuk 2:6. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay.
Right. You go into that word thick clay, go to the word ibad, which means heavy debt. You know, that ultimately what, you know, America is what, trillions of dollars in debt, man. Yeah. That's how America ultimately, you know, thrives. You got the what's that, the bad debt ratio of each citizen, man. You know, ultimately what, these different people being in debt, man. That's how ultimately America thrives, man.
That's thick clay. And how was America able to go that deep in debt and still function? Why? Because America had the global reserve currency.
Yeah.
So that enabled them to to inflate the currency, push the debt off onto the rest of the world. Thick clay, just keep pushing it off, adding up.
Yep.
But it's like it says, how long?
Yep.
It's not gonna last forever, man.
Yeah, because we see the you know, the complications happening right now, man. You know, because what America has done over the centuries, man, they try to put band-aids on shotgun wounds, you know, and ultimately what? It's to the point it's noticeable by the whole world, man. You know.
Book of James chapter 5 verse 1 says, go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. You have heaped treasure together for the last days. Right? And you know, these people trusting in this whole monetary system, man, you know, thinking that that's going to be some type of defense or some type of shelter. All right. He's telling you what, those things are rusted. You know, those things are pretty much decaying and being destroyed, amounting to nothing. You know, it said it's corrupt, man. You know, it's no good. It's not going to do you any good in that day, man. All of these, the monetary system that America established is over. And then after that is the kingdom of Israel.
Yeah.
You know, there's no other. It was never written to go any other way, man. You know.
I want to back you up, Adonia. This book of Revelations 18:1. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. What is Babylon the Great? Hey, America, man. It says, and it's become the habitation of devils and the hole of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Because what's ultimately found here on the source of America, homosexuality, you know, adultery, all different type of wicked spirits, that ultimately is on these people, man,
Right.
doing all type of wicked acts,
The
man.
cage of every unclean bird.
Yep.
Hey, and this is where Israel got slaughtered at
Yep.
by the hundreds of millions.
Mm-hmm. It says, for all nations, just to back up that Jeremiah 51, the brother Daniel read, Revelations 18:3 says, for all nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. Right? Ultimately, these countries, once upon a time, in bed with America. Now, all of a sudden, they catching, their woman is becoming whores. They're being subject to regime change, democracy change, and things of that nature, man. But ultimately, what, being in bed with America, man. It says, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Right? These different nations once upon a time allied with America. They partook, and ultimately, what, the riches, the spoils. It says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Right? Talking about, the nation of Israel, beginning with the elect, man. Come out of her, my people, man. And we know that the elect is going to be delivered by the way of the chairs, what the world will ignorantly call UFOs, man. It says, and that you receive not of her plagues. What's going to be the plagues of this place? That cherry on top being the missiles. Her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yahawah have remembered her iniquities. And right, Yahawah is beginning to judge this. Because what does 2nd Ezra 9 say? Ultimately, what? The Lord is coming back to visit the world in which He made. It says for her sins, and even in 2nd Ezra, it says the Lord is going to smite Egypt with the plagues as before.
Again,
yeah. Yep, again, that's the plagues as before. It says, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yahawah have remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works in the cup. When she had filled to her double. Right? What did this place ultimately reward us, man? A death and destruction, man. Rape, robbery, and murder. And ultimately, what? The same is going to come upon this place, man. Who's in control of America, man? These Edomites, beginning with these elites, man. Ultimately, what? We were rewarded with robbery and murder, and they're going to receive double, man. It's going to start with what? The Lord ultimately, what? Destroying their kingdom, and ultimately, what? Putting these devils into slavery, man. And that's going to be the joyful beginning, hey, man. When the Lord ultimately delivers us, bless us with that spirit power, we start putting chains on these devils. And it says, verse 7, it says, how much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. And that's been the mindset of America this whole time, man. This place haven't been touched by a major war or anything like that, man. This place haven't been invaded before. But ultimately, what? This place is going to be touched. This whore is going to be touched. Because what? America is ultimately what? Known as the woman in the book of Revelations, man. It says, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord Yahawah who judges for her. And how is that going to happen? By the way of the thermonuclear missiles, man. As we read in that Jeremiah 51, it talks about, spare no arrows, man. It talks beast of destruction, which is Isaiah 14, if I'm not mistaken. That's how this place is going to be destroyed. Hey, Revelation 17 says what? The beast shall hate the whore. And it says, and the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and to live deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. Because this is going to be a worldwide broadcast when this place is destroyed, man. It's going to be broadcasts for what? These other countries to see, man. That this place is burning, that this place is ultimately destroyed, man. Because what? America, and it still somewhat is, man. America is looked at that golden city. You come here, you make money, you live a so-called, a great life, man. Which we know is to be a lie, man. We know the American dream is a lie, man. But you have other people, seeing afar off that, man, America is what it is, but it's coming out, man, that this place is not what it's all cracked up to be, man. Because what does Isaiah 47 says, man? Lift up the skirts, this place being exposed. I'll cover her. Yep. It says, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment coming. How's that going to happen, man? By the way of those thermonuclear missiles, man. The Lord is going to, do a easy riddance of this place, a quick riddance of this place, man. How over the years, you see, what's that, 250 years that this place was established off what? Robbery and murder. And it's going to take the Lord only 1 hour to destroy this place, man. And it's that bitter end, man.
I didn't
I'm going to grab that Psalms 30.
Oh, yeah. Book of Psalm, chapter 30, In verse 5, it says,
You got a thing, Salaki.
Psalms chapter 30, verse 5, for his anger endureth but a moment, and his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning.
Right. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning, man. You know, we're still in captivity for the time being, man. You know, we're crying out, you know, to YAHAWASHI to come deliver us, man. You know, so ultimately what? The Lord is anger is subsiding. He's ultimately what? Coming back to deliver us, man. Lord will be of the hope for right select. And it said, but what? Joy cometh in the morning, man, because we're about to experience how it's truly like to ultimately live, man. I ultimately, you know, feels like for our woman not to come up against us, man. Our children, you know, having fun without them being kidnapped, man. We don't have to worry about chemtrails or fucked up food we eating, man. You know, we're gonna have spiritual power, man. That's all what's coming, man. You know, to the Lord's people, man, beginning with the elect. You know, so joy cometh in the morning, man. Hey, this is nothing but a huge nightmare. You know, when you finally wake up out of that nightmare, you finally wake up, man. You know, you dust yourself out like, damn, that was a fucked up dream.
Well, it says that in Job, he'll be chased away like a...
Job 20. Yep. He shall be chased away as a vision of the night, you know, loosely paraphrasing, you know.
So, 2 Ezra 7:42, he answered me then and said, this present life, America, this present life is not the end where much glory doth abide. Therefore have they prayed for the weak. But the day of doom shall be the end of this time, and the beginning of immortality for to come, wherein corruption is past.
Right. The day of doom shall be the end of this time. The end of what time, man? The end of Esau's age, man. Because what's that 2 Ezra 6:9? It says, for Esau's the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of that follow. He's going to have a violent end. It's going to begin with him losing his kingdom. That's the day of doom. The return of YAHAWASHI, destroying this place with fire, which is those thermonuclear missiles. And it says in the you can read that part again, the time of immortality to come.
2 Ezra 7:43. But the day of doom shall be the end of this time.
Right, the end of this age, the end of this man's rulership.
And the beginning of immortality for to come.
Right, because we're gonna have what? Spiritual powers. You know, we're gonna live forever, man. You know, we're gonna have to worry about, you know, the everyday struggles of this life, man. You know, so ultimately what? The Lord is coming back to bring change, man. You know, what that nigga Martin Luther King King said, you know, that sellout. He said, oh my God, how is it called? He said, you know, change has come or some shit like that.
Free at last.
Well, you're free at last. Oh my God, we're free at last. And ultimately, that's gonna really mean something when the Lord ultimately what? Deliver his elect, man. You know?
Yeah, it says wherein corruption is past.
Yeah, wherein corruption is past, man. Ultimately, what? You know, this wickedness, us being in this flesh, man. You know, the way that this we live this so-called everyday life, man, it's gonna be a thing of the past, man. You know, I got one more to back you brothers up, if I may. This is the book of John, not John, Revelations 21. I don't know why I had John on it, man. Revelations 21:1. It says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth was passed away, and there was no more sea. Ultimately meaning, you know, that going into that word new means kainos, which means a refreshment. You know, so the Lord is coming back to ultimately to vacuum this bullshit up, and also he's going to bring in a refreshment, a righteous rulership, huh? You know, so we call it that 2 Ezra 6. You know, for Esau's the end of the world, Jacob is the beginning of that following. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from Yahweh out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Right, that's the you know, the elect coming out from that fathership, man. You know, ultimately what? You know, you're going to have the elect with spiritual powers. Ultimately what's coming back down to reclaim the earth, man. It says, and I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of Yahweh is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Yahweh himself shall be with them and be their power. And Yahweh shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And right, this is a part of the new covenant, man. You know, we're going to be made immortals, man. You know, we're not going to die. Because what's that? 2 Corinthians, the 15th chapter. What's that? 1 Corinthians 15. You know, how it talks about, you know, yep. You know, ultimately what? You know, the former things are passed away. You know, ultimately what? You know, we're not going to die anymore, man. We're going to have those new bodies, you know. And this is going to be what? The joyful beginning, man. You know, we're going to enjoy this earth and rulership. We're going to be ruling righteously, man. You know.
So like I'm still.
I got one real quick.
15.
Okay.
No, go ahead. You get that, bro.
2 Ezra 13. 2nd Ezra 13 and 33. Ultimately, Yahawashi's return in the midst of World War III. And when all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave the battle that they have one against another, and an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as thou sawest them willing to come and to overcome him by fighting. So they're going to try, the nations are going to try to fight against the Lord. He's going to return in the midst of war, man. What would I be if it was already kindled? It says, verse 35, to back up that Revelation 21. But he shall stand upon the top of Mount Zion, and Zion shall come and shall be shewed to all men, being prepared and builded, like as thou sawest the hill graven without hands. That's that New Jerusalem.
Yep. Hey, that Revelation 21, which I just read, man. New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, man.
So Zion's gonna be showed to all men, prepared and builded.
Yep.
Did you want that 1 Corinthians 15?
Yeah, Baba Kushah.
The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 40. There are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial, but the glory of the celestial is one, the glory of the terrestrial is another.
Right, because the bodies that we have is celestial, man.
Terrestrial.
Terrestrial.
Terra meaning earth.
Yeah, right. Yep. We and ultimately, the angels got the celestial bodies. The water for that correction, brother. Yep, ultimately what they don't die, they don't have to eat, but ultimately, when we get those, new bodies and things like that, man, hey, we're not gonna die, but we're gonna be able to enjoy the pleasures of this life, but we're not gonna, we're not gonna die, extraterrestrials.
Yep. So yeah, this place on its way out, man. This place is it's had its time, and America has run its course. Y'all had anything else?
Actually, you jumped to in that same chapter. You jumped to verse 50.
1 Corinthians chapter 15.
You can just read to the end.
Verse 50. It says, "Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Yahawah, neither doeth corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed."
Right, we shall be changed, man. It talks about that in the Wisdom of Solomon 5. The strangers of our salvation, man. We're going to be changed in an instant,
Verse 53, "For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory."
Right. This is a part of the new covenant, man. We're not going to die. We're going to live forever. Hey, tying back to that Revelation 21 and 4, man. Even any more death, man. For the former things are passed away.
Yep. Verse 55, "O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to Yahawah, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Yahawashi Mashiach. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of YAHAWASHI, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in YAHAWASHI."
And right, Yahawashi was the first one to overcome death, man. And what does it say? It says, we shall not know how we shall appear, but we shall be like him.
Yeah, we shall be like him.
And that's ultimately what we're going to be like. We're going to be like Yahawashi, man. We're going to be joint heirs with Yahawashi. And that's ultimately what the joyful beginnings, man. To be, reunited with our big brother again, man. The one that ultimately lifted up the curse of death for us, man. And ultimately that's what's coming, man. That's that joyful beginning, man. But that's pretty much all I had. If Jake had anything else. You was good, I
got one real quick. Wisdom of Solomon 2 and 23. "For God created man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity." So that's what we're going to get back to, Lord willing.
Well, will we be at the elect, man?
We'd be the first fruits to actually taste of that.
Yep. It's all good, brother. So you was all good today. So with that being said, we hope this lesson was edifying. When end up, I give all praise, honor, glory to
YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, HaKodash.
Double honors to the elders and the apostles of great millstone that taught us the truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. Lord, we hope this lesson was edifying. To next time, Kwame Yasharella. Shalom and Abba.
Shalom. Abba, my heart.